Welcome everyone. It is delightful to have you with us on our first webinar. Tonight you're going to take away some creative ways to increase your investment property rent return and maximise the value in your property. These will also apply to your own home. So if you're looking to either in your investment property, your own home, or looking to purchase a property in the future, you're going to get some great information out of tonight's event. It's great to have you here. Have I said that already? I'm a little bit nervous. But please, if you've got a question, put it into the chat and we will answer those as we go or at the end. So please just do that and change your chat setting to everyone so everyone can see it. We'd love for you to be involved, and as we go through the evening and you've got a question, pop it in there and either one of my guests will be able to answer it or we will look at them at the end. So you know what to expect. Tonight, there are 5 of us that will be presenting to you. Myself, of course, the Director of Vertigro Property Management. And then we have Kate Madsen from Paua Planning, Jonathan Watts from Simply Finance, Kirsten Ford from KFD Interiors, and Dave Whitehead from Lifebuilt Construction and Bella Kitchens. So let's just see, so you know, we've just gone through that order. This is what you can expect for us to come through. We're just going to have you for an hour and then we will let you go. So hold tight, buckle in your seatbelts and get ready to be fed with a fire hose. So Kate, can I invite you to come and share with us as we start?
Well, good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me, Megan. I'm from Paua Planning, based in North Auckland, beautiful side of the Harbour Bridge. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to kick straight into this because you guys need some top tips on how to maximise property. So when you're looking at property or when you've already got a property and you're thinking, what can I do with my property? How can I maximise the return on it? I'm going to share my screen now, so let's just get that underway so you can see it. Presume it's there. Yay. I'm now sharing with you. You can see Paua Planning coming up there. And I'm going to start with the first tip and you're not going to like this one because this one talks about constraints. And what I want you to do, first thing I want you to be able to do is to learn to stalk your property. So whatever property you're looking at, if you go to Auckland Council GIS maps, and some of you will be familiar with this already, but there's 2 different sets of maps. There's either the Auckland Council unitary plan maps or there's the geo maps, and these will tell you different sorts of things about your property, because the first thing you need to know when you are looking at doing something with property is what is going to stop me from being able to develop? What are the hindrances that are going to get in the way? So that will tell you your zoning, if there's any appeals on that zone, any overlays or constraints in terms of zoning or overlays. And then geo maps, you've got natural hazards, underground services, cultural heritage, and I just want to take you there quickly so you can have a look. This is from GIS Maps, fantastic aerials. You can spy on all sorts of people. This is the Long Bay area, and this is maps from 2017, so relatively current and good to get an overview of an area. It helps you see bird's eye view straight away of the area that you're looking at. But you can also look at historic aerials. So this is Long Bay in 1959, I think. So you can see all the development that's gone on from there. It's crazy. And this is important to look at the historic use of the land, because particularly out West Auckland, if you're looking at sites out there, often they were used for horticultural purposes, and so they may have contaminated soil issues. And that's something to be aware of, because that's a bit of a flag for triggering a resource consent or additional reporting that might need to be done. But heading back to the GIS maps, the topographical base map, you can check from here what sort of road you're located on. You think that's not very important, but it actually is, because if your site is on an arterial road or a collector road, the unitary plan has restrictions over access ways for those types of roads. So that's another constraint to be aware of. You can also see from this topographical map where larger lots may be, or areas of open space, which are obviously attractive places to purchase nearby or to own property in the vicinity of. Then, of course, fun just keeps on going, because you can look at where the floodplains are, where the streams are, the rivers are. We all know that this is a big issue in New Zealand at the moment in terms of clean water, and a whole lot of new legislation around fresh water. So it's important, if you have an overland flow path, anything like that, even if you don't need a building consent, you may still trigger a resource consent. So important to be able to make a list of these sorts of constraints. Then, of course, you can see your underground services. We're still in the Long Bay area, and you can see where the wastewater network is, the stormwater, water, all sorts of services. And this is where engineers start their research as well. So this is where a desktop study starts, and it's the best place to start when you're looking at property. Before you get any plans drawn, you don't want to be building on top of a wastewater pipe. Do you need to get access services through a neighbour, that sort of thing? And you can also check if there's any protected trees, or all these red dots on this Long Bay area are all archaeological sites. So they're all middens, which obviously have importance for tangata whenua and would trigger the need to liaise and consult with iwi. So these are the sorts of things that the maps can tell you. And I encourage you to go and have a real play with the GIS maps. Now, the unitary plan maps, of course, show you the zoning, and it's lovely colour coded, so it's easy to follow whether you're looking at, and I think if I move my cursor you'll be able to see it, the single house zone, the mixed housing suburban zone, mixed housing suburban down here, mixed housing urban zone, and the terraced housing and apartment zone. Again, then you can see the purple is business and park, business and industry, so you can see if your site is located near an area of business, or if it's near a big green open space. So this gives you context for your site, but also tells you what the zoning is. And watch out, because sometimes the site can have split zoning across the middle, something to watch for. Then it can also tell you if there's overlays or precincts on your land, such as all these green areas are significant ecological area. So that's obviously going to trigger additional consents in regard to earthworks or building constraints, building platform areas. You might have outstanding natural landscape, or a statutory acknowledgement overlay, all big words, but it's interesting because you can explore and it's explained as you go. So that's the first top tip. Stalk property, very important. Your second top tip is, once you've identified all the constraints, it's time to look at the opportunities, because knowledge is power. So most residential land in Auckland has development potential. If single house, you can put a minor unit on as a permitted activity. You might need a building consent. You don't need a resource consent, as long as you don't infringe any building envelope or yard setbacks, height, etc. And you can also split an existing dwelling into two. So I've had clients who've had a large house and they decide to split it into two, put a firewall in, and have two rental incomes from one existing dwelling. In the mixed housing suburban zone and mixed housing urban zone, you can put 3 houses on a site as of right. So that's important to know before even triggering resource consent. And if you put 3 houses on a site, you don't necessarily have to subdivide around them. Most people do, but you don't have to. But do note that every subdivision consent does require resource consent. So you can't do a subdivision without resource consent. Third tip, find the path of least resistance. So if you're a person who likes to avoid red tape, then just do that. There's plenty of building improvements that don't trigger building consent or resource consent. So you can do building work up to 30 metres squared, doesn't require consent. Things like sleep outs, sheds, carports, outdoor fireplaces, and you can actually build yourself as long as you follow the building code. So that's pretty cool. I like that. My husband actually wants to build a hay barn up to 110 metres squared. So I think that'll be our next project. And you can even build bridges, just not across a road. So find that path of least resistance and explore what you can do without requiring any consents, and save some money there. Then, of course, tip 4, actually decide to take on a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, and find a site to subdivide, because there's a lot of them around. You'll need to contact a surveyor or a planner to get some information, and realise that if you're in rural zones, you actually have to have an area of bush or wetland in order to protect that, in order to subdivide. Most people apply for a land use and a subdivision at the same time, and you lodge a resource consent with your house plans. So site plan, floor plan, elevations, that's all you need. And then the subdivision is approved around that development. Just the fact that anyone who buys that lot has to build that house that you've designed, so, or create a variation to it. So there's a lot of learning curves in there, but it's exciting learning curve. And my last tip is to stay informed. And this is important. You know, knowledge is power. I've said that before. And, you know the new announcement from everyone's deciding you're going to be able to put 3 houses, 3 stories high on every site in Auckland. Well, I mean, I don't think that's anything special because so many sites on Auckland you can already do that with. And in my opinion, it's not a helpful announcement because development can only move as fast as infrastructure. And we have a crumbling infrastructure in terms of wastewater. We've got, you know, sewage leaking into our beaches. We need that fixed before we can do too much more intensification. So there's plenty of scope within the current unitary plan for development. Also, most planners and surveyors will give initial advice for free in order to try and get business. So don't be afraid to ask the stupid questions. I still ask stupid questions. And also the council have a free help desk. So you can get 15 minutes for free, take advantage of that. And order property files online from council. This is a really top tip because a LIM that you normally get from a real estate agent only gives you limited information. A property information, a property file will give you everything that council holds on that particular property. And you'll only pay $65 for it or $97 if you want it in 3 days. Also, copies of certificates of title from LINs, really important. You only pay $5, you get them instantly. You can see if there's any easements or consent notices on the title, other constraints you need to be aware of. And that is my timer for 10 minutes. So you can see the 3 new acts that are coming in. The Natural and Built Environment Act, the Strategic Planning Act, and the Climate Adaptation Act, which is to deal with the managed retreat of the coastline due to climate change. So lots of changes coming up. So stay informed with all of that. And thanks for listening. And I hope it's been helpful. And I think I'm passing over now to Jonathan Watts to talk about finance. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Kate. Before we go to Jonathan, thank you so much for that, Kate. Great information to take on board. Like I say, it's a bit like a fire hose of information, but so good. And being able to split a property into 2, I think a lot of people miss that. So looking for that opportunity, if you're looking to buy, what could you do? But always get advice first, because you don't want to get into a sticky situation that I've come across several times lately, which Jonathan will probably talk about, which is purchasing a property that isn't consented, because, well, you probably won't be able to purchase it because the bank won't give you the money, but you certainly can't rent it either. So anyway, this is Jonathan from Simply Finance. So please, people, add your questions in so that we can answer them. That would be great. So anything that Kate raised, if you've got a question on that, this is the time to ask the stupid question. There is no stupid question, as Kate said. So here you go, Jonathan, take it away.
Thanks, Megan. Appreciate that. And thanks, Kate, for all that fantastic information. I'm a bit of a bridge builder myself. I'm a property investor and a proud owner of several mortgages, but that's what you do when you're in property. Quite a bit to get through here, so I'm going to go relatively quick. And to start with really what's happening out there in the property market at the moment. So we've had unprecedented growth in house prices. As you can see, over the past year, it's actually been 30% year on year. And I have clients who were telling me a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were going to wait for a property market correction because they were going to buy then. Well, they're now $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 behind where the property market was heading. It is stabilizing. There is a bit of FOMO out there still, so there still are some hot spots of certain property that's attracting high prices, but generally we're going to start tracking down in terms of growth in property prices. The other challenge out there at the moment is listings. And the bottom line is the current listings in the market. And as you can see, historically, it is extremely low. So if a real estate agent can find a property to sell, they will generally sell it. Their challenge is getting that property and being able to take it to market. Plenty of buyers out there, not enough sellers. But here's the real story of what's been happening across New Zealand in general. And the column to look at is the middle column, which is the annual change in house prices and house price inflation. Across New Zealand, 30%. But the real standout there is Manawatu, and no disrespect to Palmerston North if you're on today. Can't really understand why Palmerston North, which is flat as a pancake, boring as anything, and has a 42% growth in house prices. But obviously people are moving there, and it's usually Aucklanders who want to get out of traffic and out of bumping into orange cones and are sick of the commute and want to go somewhere quieter. I had a client who moved to Palmy, thought she would buy a property, a better property at an Auckland price, and in the end had to pay the same Auckland price to get something over there. So big rises all around New Zealand. The other challenge we've got is construction prices continue to ramp, and they're rising all the time. And as you would have heard this week, probably on the news, the government is looking to start an investigation into building costs and supply. And it's all actually is down to the supply chain, limited suppliers, problems getting product into the country at the moment. Shipping costs are exorbitant, and that's what's causing the pressure on the market. So building costs are surging, and it's not yet done. The challenge with that is that in any build contract is a thing called a sunset clause, and a sunset clause is generally there for the purchaser who may be waiting a long time to get their house, and there's challenges getting that done. So the sunset clause is a future date where they can come to a point and go, hey, I'm out, I'm not going to buy this anymore. Well, the challenge now is that the actual builders and developers are exercising the sunset clause because they can resell that property tomorrow for more money. It's cost them more to build, so they're going to sell it for more if they can. And where we're heading towards probably a bit of a housing surplus, believe it or not, at some point. And as Kate mentioned before, people are bowling houses off 800 square meter sections and putting up 3 or 4 townhouses. Now, not everybody wants to live in a wardrobe, which is pretty much what these are. They're fairly tiny. So if you have property with land, that's a great thing to buy in Auckland at the moment because that will still retain value. We're going to end up with probably a surplus of housing because Auckland's actually not growing. Believe it or not, last year, Auckland did not grow. There was 0 immigration out of the country. There are Kiwis coming back, and 60% of people coming back out of the country stay in Auckland. But it shows that the regions have had massive growth, and people are starting to fan out because they just don't want to live in a congested city. So there's multiple conflicting pressures on the housing market at the moment. Things like you can't get a fixed price contract generally for a new build. Banks want a fixed price contract. They don't want to find you coming back to see them in 6 months' time and telling them we need $80,000 more to complete. So that's one of the challenges. Building costs are ballooning, lending is tightening. There's LVR restrictions, loan to value ratio restrictions coming in. 80% on a owner occupied, 60% on a investment property that's existing, but it is only 80% on a new build for an investment property. So effectively what the government has done has set first home buyers against investors because investors want to buy a new build now because they still get the tax benefits. First home buyers want to buy a new build because it's generally where they can get the best access now. So there's challenges all around the place in terms of what's happening, and the banks are wanting to restrict interest-only loans as well. So here's some truths about property investment if you're looking at that. And I really, this is one of the takeaways from tonight that I feel is worth remembering. The question really is, when's a good time to plant a tree? Well, 30 years ago, great time to plant a tree. When's the next best time? Today, next best time. When's the best time to buy a property? Well, 20 years ago if you could, but when's the next best time? Today. So that's really the idea. If you're wanting to get into property investment, just start because it's a time transaction, and you could think it was a get rich quick scheme in Auckland over the past 3 years, but that's changed. We're now going back to it's a slow growth or measured growth, and it's a time transaction. You need to allow for the tough times. You've got to make sure you've got fat in the system and money set aside for the tough times, for when you have vacancy in your rental property or for when you have unexpected repairs that come along that you just weren't expecting. That might cost a lot more. Use a good property manager. These guys are gold, in the sense that if you manage it yourself and you get the phone call at 5:30 on a Saturday night, you're having a nice cold beer around the barbecue with friends, and you've got a call from your tenant going, the toilet's blocked. and you've got to go down there and clean it and clear it. Not a great thing. Get a property manager. You need to hold property unless you're in the market of doing up and flicking, which requires advice as well around the best way to handle that. It's a time transaction where you should generally hold. I have held some properties now for a number of years, and I've been pretty happy with what's happened with them, especially in the last few years. I have a policy of never giving money back to a bank. Too hard to get and too hard to get back. So if you've got it, we keep it. We find a way to keep it. You need to watch the numbers if you're going to property investment and manage your emotions. You are not a charity necessarily, but you need to watch the numbers. And it's a business. It's not anything else other than you're focusing on making a return on a business and providing a quality product. And ask the hard questions. You got to think about the things that could come along. What about divorce? What about death? What about redundancy? How are we going to handle those things if things go wrong and go belly up? So it's important to consider those difficult things. What's changed out there? There's plenty that's changing out there at the moment. There's been a new or changes to a rather important act that has come in. And whilst it may mean absolutely nothing to you tonight, it will if you want to borrow money anywhere from now on. The government, again, has used a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. They were trying to control the money shops down in South Auckland, more than likely, in terms of keeping people in perpetual debt, which those guys were very good at. So what they've done is they've tightened up the lending legislation and what needs to happen. And so now banks, mortgage advisors need to drill into your life in a far greater way and do far more analysis and make sure you understand what you're borrowing, what the cost is, and what your exit strategy is down the track. Debt to income ratios are coming. Already 2 banks have them in, which is 6 times income. So let's say you're earning 100,000 a year, your maximum borrowing is 600,000. That is not going to buy you a great property in Auckland, if anything. So that is coming, and it's coming to try and curtail the market as well. And the Reserve Bank will bring those in they'll be coming in for some other banks as well soon. So what about the bank? They're an interesting bunch of characters, these guys. They have what they call assessment rates. Now, you might think that you can afford the mortgage that you're looking at and quite easily do that based upon the rates you see published. But banks have what they call assessment rates. And this is the rate that they check whether you can afford this lending. Plus, they have a bunch of expenses on the side, which they're also checking against your bank statements to see what you can afford. So they know life happens. You know, teeth break, cars get damaged, expenses come along unexpectedly, and they always build some fat in the system to make sure that you can handle it. And those rates will continue to go up over the next couple of years. You need to be bank ready. And by bank ready, when you're wanting to go for finance, whether you're a first home buyer, looking to invest or looking to move banks, it's even more important now to be bank ready. You need to control your spending because they're going to look at it with a fine tooth comb now. BNPLs, love acronyms, buy now, pay later. And there's a plethora of them out there, and they are littering people's bank statements. Everyone thinks, you know, instant gratification, I can buy that thing and I'll pay for it over time. What you don't realize, if you're going to a bank and they see all the spread through your bank statements, they're going to count that as an expense that's going to restrict what you can borrow. If you're in business, self-employed, you must have your 31 March accounts done, and they will also want year-to-dates, and they will want to forecast through to 31 March next year. Banks work off financial statements. If you're on commission, no matter how long we can go back and prove that you've earned great commission, they're going to scale it to 80% of what you've earned. It's taking at least, and that's a minimum, at least 2 weeks to even start to get a response at the moment because of the volume going through banks. Things are taking longer, up to a month, up to 6 weeks to actually get an answer, get a turnaround, especially if you're having to go back with other information. They're asking more questions than ever before. And if there's ever been a time to multi-bank, and that means having more than one main bank, now is probably the time. If you're an investor, it may suit you to be with one bank, but ultimately, if you sell a property, a bank will keep the profit from that sale and apply it to your other mortgages. Now, there's strategies around that, and you don't have control over the sale of the funds from your property, believe it or not. So that needs to be probably talked through, and a mortgage advisor is a good person to chat to. Something that Megan alluded to, if you're selling or purchasing, doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, if you have unconsented work on your property Get it sorted before you go to market. If you are buying a property with unconsented work, don't. You're not going to get finance. It's too hard. If there's any title issues, there will be challenges with that as well. And that's because insurance companies won't insure unconsented work now. So that's the challenge with that. How do banks know this stuff? They're going to look at everything you've got, all your history, all your credit ratings. Gone are the days where the bank will say, shut up and take the money. It just doesn't happen anymore. Going fairly quickly now. So if you are looking to purchase an investment property, this is how it's done. And this is really not specific advice for you. It's very general advice. But you basically take the value of your current owner-occupied property. We maximize the mortgage we can take out of that. And we take the money away and we use that to purchase another property with additional finance on top of that. Now, your circumstances will be different to everyone else's, and that's where a conversation with me is probably important. So what's happening with rates? Just the pressure's on. They're going up. They've gone up faster than anyone was expecting. And that's the scary part. By the time we get to 2023, the 1-year rate's probably going to be in the mid-5s or early 5% range as the current target is where we think it's going. And so there's just pressure on for the increases to happen. Tomorrow, there is an OCR announcement from the Reserve Bank, and it's 60-40 whether they're going to put it up 25 basis points or 50 basis points, but it will affect the floating rate and it will affect the 1- and 2-year rates when it happens. Here's a little quick summary of where rates have gone since 2014, the last 7 years. And we had a bit of a blip back in 2014 where it was higher. And there's a whole generation of people out there now, homeowners, mortgage advisors, that have never seen a rate increase and don't know how to handle this. Those of us who have a few more grey hairs have seen this before, been through the bumps, kind of know where this is going to go. But everyone was getting greedy and wanting the lowest rate earlier on and ignored the 2.99 for 5 years, which was a great rate to take. But we're currently heading up, and that's unfortunately going to put pressure on everyone's budget, especially because most people fixed for 1 year and they're going to come off onto some bigger rates now. My name is Jonathan. I'm a mortgage advisor. I'd be happy to talk to you if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jonathan. Very challenging, as we know. There is so much media chat about finance and housing, but like Jonathan said, when is the best time to plant a tree? It is right now. So tonight, this is what we're sharing with you, some great ways to get the best out of your property so that hopefully that will lead to greater value, which will then mean that you can have more to be able to invest in yet another property to build your portfolio, or to add value to your own home so that you can get the next thing to get an investment property. So that's what we're here to help you. Please put the questions in the chat, question and answer, so that we can answer them. Like we say, there is no stupid question, so it's worth asking it now. You can even become anonymous so that you're not embarrassed about your name. So please do that. Now, we are going to move to Kirsten because she is going to share some great ideas with us for how we can get the best value out of our property, what we can do to lift our property to maximize the value. So I'll hand it over to you, Kirsten.
Hi, thanks, Megan. My name's Kirsten. I founded KFD Interiors 6 years ago now, and we work on a wide range of residential and some commercial properties throughout New Zealand. We love working on new builds and full renovation projects where we can partner our clients right through for the journey of creating their dream home. But whatever project we work on, whether it's a multi-million-dollar build or refreshing a kitchen and bathroom, our goal is to make the space tailored to whoever's going to call it home. So tonight, and I'll just share my screen here. Once you've taken the plunge and making the investment in a property, I think there's 3 keys to maximizing that investment. Firstly, it's about the exterior appeal. Then it's about flooring as another thing. Another key is paint, the kitchens and the bathrooms. Before we go through all of those, there's one principle that I think is really important, and that is that function can always be married with form. So I think the temptation is, when you're looking at an investment property, is that you can forego form and focus on function only. But I believe most selections can still look super stylish whilst being practical and durable as well, and that will give you the edge. So let's talk about the exteriors of your property. First of all, I think the old adage is definitely true, that first impressions definitely count. I think one of the key things is a crisp, fresh exterior paintwork. I think you can choose a color scheme which is modern, but it still needs to be timeless, and it needs to be one that's going to age well. And also consider what's happening with the neighbouring properties. You want to make sure that you blend in with them and don't stand out too much. Another key is planting. Planting is going to really soften the home. It doesn't need to be beautifully landscaped, but it needs to be welcoming and well tended. And this is an example of a property in Onehunga, a villa where the green and yellow paintwork was definitely outdated. So we refreshed the paintwork with a nice crisp white and grey colour scheme, Vertigro red front door, to update the home for a new era and a new family. I think the people that were most pleased to see the back of the yellow and green paintwork were the neighbours. And then talking about the flooring in your home, floorings are definitely the foundation of the interior in your home. And while you might have a mix of flooring materials, you need to ensure that there's visual continuity throughout the home. I think it's important to choose the flooring as one of the very first selections that you make, and then match other things to that. So firstly, tiles. They're going to be the most durable option that you can select, and definitely should consider them for use in the entrance and in your bathroom. There's lots of amazing patterns and textures that you can select from, but make sure that as a minimum you go for a 60 by 60 tile size. You want to minimize the grout lines to make it look less busy. And then while nothing beats the appeal and the look and the feel of solid timber flooring, unless it's a super high end investment property, laminate flooring is probably the way to go. It's easy to lay, it's easy care, and really durable. And then carpet. Carpet is an area that I would consider primarily for bedrooms, and I would definitely, for an investment property, look at solution dyed nylon carpets. These are going to be fade and stain resistant, and I'd also look at options that have multiple flecks of colour in them. They're going to be far more forgiving than an expanse of a solid colour. This is an example of, this is the before photos, an example of a renovation in Red Beach that we worked on a few years ago. And throughout the home, there were multiple flooring types. And we replaced the flooring throughout with an engineered timber, which really provided flow and continuity throughout the open plan kitchen, living and dining area. And you'll also see that we created a little bit more continuity through that space by repeating the kitchen splashback tile, and we used it as a feature wall in the living room as well. Next area, paint. I think paint is one of your key best tricks for adding personality and appeal to a property. And in an investment property, I would always look at white as being the base of your canvas, and using a nice crisp white for the walls, for your trim and for your ceilings. But then use carefully selected accent colours that are going to work with your overall colour scheme for the home. And you can consider using accent colours in bedrooms, in the living room, and even the bathrooms. So this is just to show you some examples of 3 different bedrooms and 3 different homes, and how we created completely different looks with different accent walls. So in the first home, you can see there's a beautiful deep moody blue that we selected as a feature wall in this boys' bedroom. The next room is a boys' bedroom as well, and we used timber paneling on the wall. And the third bedroom is a pretty special guest bedroom where we used a great textured wallpaper. So 3 different rooms and 3 very different looks that have been created just by changing out the wall treatments. And you can imagine if those walls were all just simply white, how different that'd look. Next area is kitchens. So I think in any property, including investment properties, the kitchen is key and is in an area to invest in well. So if you're not completely renovating your kitchen, I think there's some key tricks that can really add value. First of all, your bench top. You consider replacing the bench top to completely refresh the look of your kitchen. Formica style laminates don't age well, and in many instances engineered stones will price up similarly compared to the Formica alternative. Next area is a splashback. You can add real colour punch and personality by selecting a fun splashback tile. You can choose something that is a colour that's going to complement the rest of the scheme, or you might even choose an interestingly shaped tile. And then a really quick way to refresh the look of a kitchen is simply updating handles on the cabinetry. And then I'm always keen to add a bit of bling to a kitchen, and pendant lights are a great way to do that, especially over a kitchen island. I tend to favour glass pendant lighting because it's sculptural and organic, but because it's clear and see-through, it doesn't create a barrier in the space and doesn't block any views. So definitely consider adding pendant lighting over a kitchen island. This is an example of a standard issue kitchen in an apartment block. And the client really wanted to add some personality to the home so that her apartment didn't look like all her neighbours. So in this instance, we tiled the front of the kitchen island and the splashback in a really nice Kit Kat or finger tile. Using the right adhesive, we didn't even need to remove the existing glass splashback. We could just tile over the top of it. We also added some great pendant lighting to the kitchen, and you can see that the overall look is something that's really welcoming and personality filled and not standard issue at all. Next area is bathrooms. So bathrooms are synonymous with water. So in my view, the fixtures and fittings in a bathroom are not an area to look at saving money. They need to be as durable as possible. So first area, tiles. I think choose your tiles well. Don't overdo the tiles. I think 2 tiles generally in a bathroom is more than adequate, 2 tile types, 3 maximum. And remember, you don't need to choose different tiles for every bathroom in a home. You can consider keeping the same floor tile and slightly changing the wall tile in the different bathrooms. And I'd also say to tile more areas than you think in your bathrooms. So tiled walls in a bathroom or a standalone toilet are going to be far more durable than any painted surface. The vanity and cabinetry, here I would go with the very best that you can afford to ensure that it's going to be durable and hassle-free in the long term. Baths, you can get a whole range of options now, including space-saving baths for bathrooms where you still want to include a bath but don't have the space. And you can also have back to the wall baths, which still give the look of a freestanding bath, but fit neatly back into the corner of a bathroom. And don't forget about adding some bling to the bathroom as well. That might be a pendant light, it might be a coloured feature tile, it might be a brushed or dark finish on your tapware, or it might be a really cool backlit mirror. But bathrooms don't have to look like utility areas, they can still tie in with the overall look and feel of your home. This is a before and after of a renovation. You can see the before image could definitely only get better. But in the finished bathroom, we chose very simple fittings, but just employed a few tricks to make the bathroom look super stylish, with nice crisp white tile to make the space look bigger, with a sandy coloured floor tile and the darker cabinetry. But we wore the cabinetry as wall mounted, which gives the illusion of more space, and then the wall mounted tapware frees up space on a smaller vanity. And we took the mirror from the surface of the vanity right up to the ceiling. Again, the oversized mirror helps give the impression of loads more space in a small bathroom. This is another bathroom. You can see there were issues here. The whole bathroom needed to be replaced, and multiple bathrooms in the home. And we chose a really cool feature tile that really closely matched a fragment of wallpaper that was found from the original villa. And we used this tile in both the bathrooms. In the home, in the family bathroom, we used it on the floor and paired it with a really bold and fun coloured accent wall. But in the ensuite, where we wanted a more sophisticated look, we took the tile up the wall for a feature wall and paired it with a nice crisp white tile. So my three top tips for adding value to your investment property. First of all, I think planning upfront is key. So select your color palette and for the exterior and the interior, and think about your color palette right throughout the home. So it's going to remember, less is always more. And visual repetition through the home is key to create harmony and continuity. And then never be afraid of adding style and edge to your investment property to make it stand out. Think about wallpaper, paint colors, pendant lights, and a really fun tile. But always think about it being timeless and stylish. And this final example, this was a property that we had loads of fun working on in the Coromandel. The client bought it as a long-term investment, but also an eye on the holidays that they would be having in the home in the short term. When we first viewed the property, it was very dated and quite pink in places, but we worked and created a very tight color scheme and materials palette, which we use throughout the home. And you can see here we've used it in the bathrooms, right through the living area and the kitchen, right throughout the home. So the finished result was a really special holiday home, which really reflects the owner's personalities. And it's a sound investment for their future, but it's somewhere where they love to spend time and make memories for the now, well, as soon as they can get out of lockdown anyway. So thank you very much for listening, and we'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to help you if you would like help and advice with adding value to your investment property. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kirsten. That is makes me want to just go and buy a property so that you can come in and transform it for me. And super easy to see with the color, the transformation of that, just choosing, like Kirsten said, a couple of colors and putting it throughout. All of a sudden you change the look of the property completely and really lifts it. And in a tenant property, for a $600 a week property to a $800 a week property to a $1,000 a week property, people coming in, the $600 a week, if it's all different colors, then you'll see that people drop off interest because they're not really interested. They think about me living here. Is it going to be something I'm going to enjoy living in? And if it's all different colors, they might not feel so comfortable. All of a sudden, adding paint through can change it completely. Like Kirsten said, adding a little bit of bling, a nice couple of pendants, changing the light fittings, all of a sudden it lifts it. Those people that dropped off because they maybe wouldn't be so proud of living there, for a small investment, and that's not a lot of money, and Dave's going to talk to us a bit about that, but you are going to lift the rent price. And once Dave's done, I'm going to show you the difference in rent that you can get when you add some of this value to your property. And if you're looking at purchasing a property, then how you can then make those changes and add that value before you buy it. So you can look at it and go, well, I know that it's only got this, but as soon as I put these tips into practice, it's going to be this, and it's going to be beneficial for either a rent return or for your own value increase. So I'm handing over to Dave now from Lifebuilt, and he's going to just talk to us about how we can add that value into our property.
Thank you, Megan. Yes, as a qualified carpenter and a licensed building practitioner, so you'll hear me refer to LBP, being a licensed building practitioner through this tonight. Basically, obviously, for most people, their home is, or their investment portfolio is their biggest asset. And the thing I find is the greatest way of keeping value is maintenance and keeping well maintained. Do it once and do it right. I think also, and it's sort of been touched on earlier, was to research your home's history. The year it was built can be quite an effect, especially for different sub-trades and trades will explain to you the pitfalls of your home, depending on how old it is. Has it been reclad? Is there land issues? Has there been a notice to fix? Has it got a COC or a CCC? And it's been mentioned earlier, so it's a really good idea to get that property file, just purely so that you can actually see what the council believes has been built on your property. If you're buying new, has the house got a guarantee? Or even if it's a few years old, is that guarantee still in place? Is it transferable? Ensure that, a good thing is to ensure that the weatherboards on the houses, especially on new builds, have actually been painted all around. As you see when you drive around subdivisions, you can quite often see raw timber showing, and that's because they haven't been painted before they've been put up. So there's things like that. There's going to create issues moving forwards for you. Has the builder been around for some time, or is he a reputable builder? Is he here today, gone tomorrow? So, you just need to be thinking about these things because you need that person to back up the product. You should be supplied with a maintenance schedule now with new builds and also with modern renovations. And things to think about is, what maintenance is going to be needed. You buy that 3-story house and you think it's going to be an amazing investment, but you are going to have to put a scaffold up on that 3-story building to repaint and in new silicone, roof repairs, etc. It's all going to be harder and harder the higher you are. And also remember that building code is a minimum standard. So it is a good idea to have houses looked at when you are purchasing one. If you decide little things like if you want to oil a deck or stain a deck, it looks absolutely fantastic. But just remember that you're going to have to keep on repeating that to keep it looking good. When you're tiling, as has been mentioned earlier by Kirsten, tiling can look absolutely awesome. And I do recommend that you look at using an epoxy grout, especially in the kitchen on the splashbacks and also in showers as well, just to keep them looking good. And it just makes it a lot stronger too. With bathrooms, we're finding with a lot of houses, it's keeping it well ventilated. sometimes the ventilation's not working, and it can be as simple as the fact that you're not getting enough air into that bathroom. So it could be just trimming the door a little bit at the bottom and letting a little bit more air in under the door to aid it to suck air through and out through the fan. We've been finding the most healthy houses that we've been going into are usually ones that have good airflow or HRV systems. That way you got less mould on the curtains and the carpet and the windowsills. We've found that a lot of tenants do leave their house all shut up during the day, and this just makes it a healthier home and keeps it healthier and protects your asset. Another thing we've been doing on a lot of houses in the last couple of years is adding in roof windows. So Veluxes, you can get some amazing systems now that don't cost a heck of a lot of money, but they're double glazed. They let in lots of light and just really can open up a room. Just really good asset. It's been talked about quite a bit over the last year, and it's been brought up a bit tonight as well about doing work that doesn't need consent. So under Schedule 1 of the Building Act, there is exemption to building work. If you wish to read this more yourself after this, you can just Google Building Act 2004 exemptions. It is fully up to you as the homeowner to decide if that work needs consent. So it's a good idea to get your head around that. If the work is carried out without a consent and it needs one, the homeowner can be fined up to $200,000. And the LBP who's carried it out, again, licensed building practitioner, can also be fined and potentially struck off. All work done on jobs that don't require consent, so if you're building a minor, sleep out, etc., it still has to be built to the building code. And due to these issues about having to be built to the building code, it's actually quite important that you get somebody that knows what they're doing, or a designer involved, so an LBP, to actually design and carry out the work to ensure that your investment works moving forward. And as Jonathan pointed out, it's quite important because when you come to sell the house, it can be a real issue. So, and bear in mind, if you're trying to do a cashy, pay cash, that contractor may not be there later on because technically they were never there. So if you have an issue in the future, they're not going to be there to help you. With the new rules, you can build up to 30 square metres for a detached building, which was mentioned earlier by Kate. Now, the unusual thing with this rule is it's actually 30 square metres internal dimensions, which is quite unusual for building, because normally things relate to coverage or exterior measurements, but it's 30 square metres of internal dimension. Important to with when you're going to do this, is check your planning, your heights to boundaries. You cannot have a bathroom or a kitchenette or water storage involved with this. And you also have to be away from the boundary. The general rule is I don't think you're allowed about 3.5 metres high, but also whatever the height is, you can't be closer to the boundary. You can't build these 30 square metre detached buildings against the boundary. You've got to be set back. And of course, there are setbacks from the road frontage, from the side boundaries, rear boundary, etc. It's been mentioned earlier, the overflow flood paths, impervious area, all these things need to be taken into consideration, and easements. And because it's structural and weather tightness, it must be undertaken by an LBP. A lot of people believe you can build them yourself, but if it's going to be a habitable space, of course, it needs to be both healthy and safe. And the wood treatments and the type of materials used need to be of structural grade. So it's really important that you go about and do it right. Otherwise, you could be spending a lot of money and it actually devalue your house. You can now do a carport, as mentioned earlier. 40 square metres carport, again, should be designed and constructed by an LBP. Failing getting an LBP, even getting an LBP to help you out by giving you some advice and supervising what you're doing would be a really good idea. You can also do awnings now, so you can do a 30 square metre awning. Again, should be an LBP, and you can actually clad it on 3 sides. You can have awnings up on, etc. You just have to have it open on one side, so you can't fully enclose it. And now all this work needs to be built to the building code. and such as using the B1 structure and B2 and durability with the building code. So the things that can cause you issues that I've noticed when clients come to me, or potential clients come to me, and they're trying to get a consent for workers, the council is not obliged to get it sorted straight away. It doesn't come under the 20 statutory days. So you could actually lose a sale of a property, or potentially lose that mortgage opportunity. For the amount that it actually costs you, and how hard it is to get a consent, it's really not worth the risk. And if a job is over $30,000, you do need a contract put in place for that legally. And just bear in mind, like I said before, not having non-consented work will decrease the value in your property. I guess finally for me, it's, don't think of the council as your enemy. The council is there to help you, and they're actually working with you and the builder to create a safe, healthy home. So yeah, that's it for me. If anyone's got if you want to develop from there and get any more questions, feel free to contact me through Lifebuilt's website. Thank you. Cheers, Megan.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. And yes, Dave, if you've got any questions, like we say, just put them in the question chat, and Dave will answer them as I just do my thing and tell you how you can get that increased value out of your property. So let's just have a look at this. We have heard a lot tonight, so I want to show you that one of the ways to get the better rent return is to find another bedroom in your property. And that's going to take some looking, but it's reasonably straightforward. You don't need a consent if you are just changing around the walls. You do if you're changing plumbing. But if you're just looking for a bedroom, depending, and like Kirsten said, flow is really important. You don't want to give up flow for function, I guess, or just getting that room at any cost. You don't want to do that, because who's going to want to live in it? But can you look at the floor plan? And I would say to do that, you want to draw out your floor plan, have a look at it, and say, where is some space? You need about 7 to 8 square meters. I think Dave, maybe he might set me right on that, but I'm pretty sure about that for a bedroom. And so could you take the dining? Is your style of your house got a separate dining? Could you change that and make it the next bedroom, going from a 2 to a 3 or a 3 to a 4? That's a really straightforward way of doing that. You really need, I've got up there you can see that you at 80 squares, you need that to go to a 2 to a 3. You wouldn't want to do it in a tiny one. I'm not a fan of 3-bedroom minors, just because they end up with being really small bedrooms, and we find that you don't really want to have a family of 6 in a 3-bedroom minor, but you'd be happy with a couple and maybe a baby. And then if you've got 90 squares, then you can add that 4th bedroom. Now, when you're adding in the 4th bedroom, you don't necessarily need 2 bathrooms. Having maybe another spare toilet is good, but you don't necessarily need to have 2 bathrooms in a 4-bedroom house. And a lot of investors think, well, I like to have my ensuite or whatever, but you've got to remember that with investment, you don't necessarily need that to get your rent return. So the other thing you can look at is, maybe is your kitchen outdated? Does it actually need to be moved? And so by moving the kitchen, you could create some more space. Or we took on a property recently and they had a huge laundry. I said to the owner, you could take the laundry out of there, put it into the bathroom, because the bathroom was older and big, had a big bath that was old, not necessarily needing baths in rental properties anymore. They could put a shower in, put the laundry there, and all of a sudden they've got a 3rd bedroom that would have been a perfect, for a child or an office. And instantly, I'm going to show you here how that affects your rent return. So, and the other way of doing it is by possibly getting a sleep out or a small cabin, not with you won't have water or anything like that in it, but instantly you could take a 3rd a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom, and you make a significant difference on that. So look at your land. Could you crane over one of the sort of sleep out units that you can pre-buy? Could you get that over and put close, position it within all the boundaries that you need? But could you do that? 2 areas that we work in, Tor Bay and Orewa. So we work on the North Shore and Hibiscus Coast mainly. And I just want to show you here on the bonds. You can see bonds are when you sign up a new tenant, they pay 4 weeks we ask for. That's a tip. Always ask for 4 weeks and rent, and it goes to the bond centre. They collect them, and they are really great now. They used to be terrible and just wouldn't give us break by down area by area, but now they do. And so you can see here that in Tor Bay, the 2 bedrooms to a 3 bedrooms, if you look at the middle column, that's the median bond return, you can see that they have instantly got a lift of $160 a week. Well, that's the 3 to the 4 bedroom, sorry. You can see the rent lift. That's really significant, and of course will definitely impact your valuation. So if you're looking to get some more money to do another one or go on to the next thing, you're instantly adding value there. And the same with Orewa. You can see that if you go from a 2 to a 3 or a 3 to a 4, it's nearly $120 a week difference. So that's significant and really worth having a look at to see where you can get that extra cash flow. What can you do to the property that won't necessarily trigger a consent? It's worth doing your research. Like Kate said, check out the files, talk to a builder and just have a chat to them. Talk to your finance guy, mortgage broker, Jonathan, and say, how much extra can I get to be able to do this? Because sometimes you're not spending a lot, but you're going to get that great return. And like Kirsten said, the flow of the property, the colors you use, you don't want a bright pink bedroom. It just doesn't work. People don't want to go there. Your kid may have loved it, but I trust you, it'll be hard finding the next one that does. So, and if you want to break it down, so now we've looked at the bonds, your market rents, you can find that. Go on Trade Me or Real Estate New Zealand and look down to your suburb and see what your comparative properties are renting out for. And of course, your property manager. And if you're on the North Shore or Hibiscus Coast, then of course that's Vertigro. Why would you go anywhere else? But you can see that the cash flow increase is a great result. It has a flow-on effect, and people are looking for these properties. So upgrades, so even just handles in kitchens, making the light fittings change, changing the paint color, changing the carpet. Well, these are what I would call minor changes. You're not adding on a 4th bedroom with an ensuite. Now, if you can, I'd say do it, because you're going to get return big time in your rent lift and ultimately your value of your property. But if that's too much for you, then doing these smaller changes makes a significant difference to the quality of your tenant and your quality of your return. So you can send us photos and say, hey, I'm looking at this property, what do you think? And just, it's talking to people. These experts are willing to talk to you and to share their ideas. It's, like Kate said at the very beginning, there's no stupid question. So let's be willing to ask and have a look, get some fresh eyes on your property. If you're not sure about that, see what you can do, because I think you'll be surprised what you can do with your existing property to get that lift in your rent, which ultimately is what you're in the game for, to provide housing, good quality housing that people want to live in and enjoy living in, creating their lives, which then of course helps, your plan for why you invested in the first place. And so chat to us about that.